Mills Darden's story sounds impossible before it even reaches the legends. He was reportedly 7 feet 6 inches tall, with a waist measuring more than 6 feet around. In 1845, he was said to weigh 871 pounds. At the time of his death, his body weight was believed to have passed half a ton. And then there are the stories of his immense strength. The evidence is uneven, but the central fact is difficult to escape. Mills Darden was not just unusually tall, he was one of the most physically massive men ever recorded. Yet, unlike many famous giants, there is no known photograph of him, no verified image, and no portrait that can be trusted. That absence is not surprising. Darden died in 1857, when photography was still expensive, specialised, and far from common in everyday life. So we cannot see Mills Darden directly. We have to reconstructing from what remains. Measurements, clothing accounts, coffin dimensions, and local records. Even the cautious version is extraordinary. Mills Darden was born in Northampton County, North Carolina in 1799. His name is sometimes written as Mills and other times as Miles, but the accounts point to the same remarkable figure. Later he moved west to Tennessee, settling in Henderson County, where most of the stories about him took shape. This was a hard physical world. Darden lived in an age of hand tools, animal power, and constant manual labour. He was remembered as a farmer whose body was so large and whose strength seemed so unusual that stories about him are still being repeated long after his death. The most widely repeated height attached to Darden is 7 feet 6 inches. That would have made him taller than almost every man alive in his time, but height alone does not explain why his name survived. What makes Darden different is the combination of extreme height and immense body mass. He was not described as narrow or fragile, he's remembered as vast in every direction, with a reported waist measurement of 6 feet 4 inches. By middle age, his weight was already being recorded at a level that still sounds almost unbelievable. The number most often attached to Mills Darden is 1,020 pounds. That figure appears in many later accounts and became the weight associated with him in the Guinness Book of Records, but it should be handled carefully. Darden was reportedly weighed at 871 pounds in 1845. Even that earlier figure would place him among the heaviest tall men ever recorded. But he appears to have gained weight throughout his life, which means the powerful farmer remembered in the strength stories was probably not mobile at anything close to his final body weight. Before reportedly becoming more sedentary around 1843, Darden may have been much lighter, perhaps closer to 600 pounds, while still being enormous by any normal standard. That distinction matters. A man of that size, if still active, could plausibly use his leverage and body weight in ways ordinary men could not. The later figure, connected to his death in 1857, is more complicated. According to the Constitution Atlanta News, on the way to the burial ground, Darden was weighed in his coffin. The cotton mill scales returned an unprecedented weight of 1,004 pounds. After deducting the weight of the coffin, his body weight was estimated to be 854 pounds. Even if the exact number remains uncertain, the broad conclusion is clear. At the time of his death, Mills Darden was believed to have weighed close to half a ton. Some of the strongest evidence of Darden's size comes from ordinary objects. His clothing had to be specially made. Accounts describe huge quantities of cloth being required for his coats and burial garments. The most famous clothing story says that 3 men each weighing more than 200 pounds could button themselves inside one of his coats. It sounds exaggerated, but it fits the wider pattern. If Darden's waist really measured more than 6 feet around, then his clothes would have not been merely large, they would have been extraordinary objects in their own right. That is why these practical details matter. Legends can inflate height, they can turn a large man into a giant, but clothing, coffins, chairs and wagons are harder to dismiss. The stories of Mills Darden's strength comes from the world he lived in. There are no verified lifts, no measured implements or photographs. His strength is remembered through work. He is said to have thrown bales of hay weighing up to 500 pounds with ease. Another story says he freed a loaded wagon from mud when ordinary men could not move it. The details cannot be verified. We do not know how heavy the wagon was, or whether he pulled it or used leverage, but the story is still plausible in its general shape. A man of Darden's size would have had advantages ordinary men could not match. His body weight alone would have allowed him to apply extraordinary force. His reach, grip and leverage would have made him extremely effective in tasks where traction mattered. There is also the story that Darden could pull an ox wherever he wanted, even when the animal used its full strength against him. Finally, he is said to have once carried 1,200 pounds of feed more than a mile, although given the sheer physical size of that amount of feed or a 500 pound bale of hay, the story is almost certainly exaggerated. The same body that made Darden powerful also began to trap him. By 1843, Darden was reportedly immobile. From that point onwards, the advantages of size had clearly begun to turn against him, and his weight probably continued to climb towards the numbers that made him famous. Some writers have speculated that Darden may have suffered from acromegaly, a hormonal disorder often linked to excessive growth hormone. In adults, it can cause enlarged hands, feet, facial features and soft tissue growth. Newspaper accounts claiming that Darden continued to grow in both height and body weight throughout his life are consistent with that theory, but they cannot confirm it. There are no medical records, verified photographs or preserved remains that allow a diagnosis. Whatever the cause, the physical consequences were real. Movement became harder, heat would have been more dangerous. Every journey, chair, bed, wagon and doorway became a practical problem. By the latter part of his life, Darden operated a tavern and inn in Lexington, Tennessee near the courthouse square. By then, his body was already part of local memory. Travellers heard the stories, neighbours repeated them, and people knew of him because a body of that scale could not pass unnoticed. Mills Darden died on January 23, 1857 in Henderson County, Tennessee. Even in death, his size created extraordinary difficulties. The coffin built for him measured 8 feet long, 35 inches deep and 32 inches in width. It required 156 feet of lumber, 3 pounds of nails, 4 boxes of tacks, 17 yards of flannel lining and 44 feet of trimming ribbon. And once it was built, the difficulty was not over. 17 men were reportedly needed to place Darden's body inside it. Afterward, Darden was buried on his own farm beside his wife. It was a quiet ending to an extraordinary life. Not in a museum, not beneath a circus poster, and not as a staged curiosity, but on the land where he had lived and worked. Mills Darden was not the tallest man who ever lived, and he was not the heaviest person ever recorded, but his combination of height and body weight may have made him one of the largest functional men ever known. His size gave him power, then it became a burden. That is what makes the story more compelling than a simple giant legend. Darden's life shows both sides of extreme human size. The numbers still sound almost impossible, but behind them was a person whose body required the world to bend around him, until eventually even that was not enough. There is no photograph of Mills Darden, no final image, no direct visual proof, only measurements, objects, records and stories. Nearly 2 centuries later, those fragments still describe a figure at the edge of human possibility, a farmer from North Carolina and Tennessee, whose body became so large that history could not quite let him disappear. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, share the video and subscribe for more. Thank you.